Because we're all useless, the Palestinians themselves have called for a global strike on Monday the 11th of December. The least you can do is do nothing, which is literally what we're asking you to do on that day. Spend nothing, don't do anything, stay at home, and keep living your privileged, entitled little lives just from home. Can you stop those lives for one day because Palestinians ask you to? Most of you will probably say no. Those of you who can, I beg, just take one day out of your insanely entitled lives for this cause, for the genocides happening across the world. I beg. I don't care if you have work. I don't care if you have a business. Shut it down. Call in sick. Get fired. It is a small price to pay for the liberation of Palestine. No one, and I repeat, no one, should be leaving their houses or spending any sort of money or going to work that day. And that this may seem like an extremely entitled video, entitled response, I am past the point of caring. The Palestinian cause is greater, the Sudan cause is greater, the Congo cause is greater. For every single one of those people, shut it down. I've heard a few people say it's not organised enough, it's too soon, no one will listen. Well, if you're watching this video and you have any form of social media, you will have seen. So don't sit there and don't pretend ignorant and say, oh, I didn't know. You did. Every single one of you sitting on the internet did. So if I see even one of yous moving that day, on site. On site.
Okay, so you guys are freaking out in the comments because you have finals tomorrow or you have to work. That's okay. I made a list of what to do if you can't strike tomorrow. Stop spending. Number one, you know the drill. Don't put any money into the system. 2, call your reps. I know it seems like it's not making a difference, but more and more reps have actually signed on to a ceasefire. So keep calling your reps. The pressure from the constituents and the pressure on the staff is getting to them. So keep doing it. 3, this is different. Email the UN asking them to enact Resolution 377A uniting for peace. Apparently, this is a way to bypass the UN Security Council. I'm not an expert, so if someone is, please let us know. 4, ask your union to demand a ceasefire or strike for a ceasefire. If you aren't part of your union, join. 5, move your money out of big banks. I've talked about this and why this is important. Big banks are complicit in conflicts around the world. Take your money out of these big banks. 5, contact news stations and ask them for more Palestinian stories. 5, spread the word. If you cannot protest physically, that's fine. Protesting with your dollar and your time is just as important, if not more important. There are so many creative ways, and big movements around the world have used creative means to protest. So keep researching and finding those creative ways. Any email, any call, any like, any comment, anything that you can do, keep doing.
Hey everyone! So one of the strangest things ever in this world is that the Israeli occupation is 75 years old and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is 75 years old. And this is so strange and heartbreaking. I mean, the Declaration of Human Rights cannot protect human beings. As Palestinian, as Gazan, who is subjected to ethnic cleansing and to genocide, to killing for more than 60 days, actually, for years and 63 days, I just want to say that the Human Rights Declaration articles protect only the civilians of great and major powers in this world, and that we as normal people, as normal human beings, are not protected. But in the International Human Rights Day, I still have some hope. I still have some faith that one day, me as Palestinian will reach justice. I hope in this day that my people obtain their freedom, and that my people will obtain their right to self-determination, and that the genocide against us will stop, and that the criminals, the war criminals, will be tried. I hope in this day that I'll be treated as a human.
Hey guys, how are you? I know it's not the suitable time to talk about places and homes because people are losing their lives, people are being killed. But I want to talk about a place. I heard yesterday that my work, my office. I have an office to create content and shoot beautiful things about Gaza and about people in Gaza. And I heard yesterday that it was bombed, so I'm now going to see the place. Ya Allah. This place was my office and my second home, and for 2 years I did everything to build this place, and now it's destroyed. With all my memories, with all my equipment, with all my work, with everything is just destroyed. They now have to move from the place because we heard the word guns.
Assalamu alaikum. It's December the 10th, 2023, live from Gaza. Let's continue the great work we started yesterday. There have been tens of thousands of mentions and hashtags of I stand with Palestine. Tens of thousands of videos have been uploaded to personal accounts and sent to our email address, itszainablol@gazanews.live.com. Today, let's focus on continuing to upload on your personal social media accounts, whether it be Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, everything that you can think of, anything that you have. Please, let's continue this trend. Let's keep pushing this. This is one of the 5 actions that we always talk about. Number 1 is to educate and learn more about Zionism, the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and learn about Islam. Number 2, create social media content. Continue to like, to share, to comment. Yesterday's Instagram video got over 2 million reactions. So this is an example of how with your support, we can get the word out. Number 3, boycott. Look at what happens to Starbucks. And once these corporations feel their pockets are hurt and their CEOs are not going to get their paychecks, they're going to start pushing politicians to change their mind. Continue to demonstrate on the ground. Let the whole world see what everyone is mad about. Let the politicians know that they will not be elected in their next elections. And finally, donate wisely. Talk to Palestinians that you know here on the ground, that you trust. Don't just give any charity online. Don't just try to put some effort into ensuring that the funds reach here. And one last thing, ceasefire will happen soon. Opening the borders will happen soon. Freedom will happen sooner than you think. The Israeli public is extremely unhappy with their government, with their war committee. The war committee themselves, they have a lot of conflict in between them. And except for the United States, they have lost all their allies or they have been neutralized. So let's continue keeping the pressure. We are winning. We look forward to seeing you here in Gaza soon to rebuild. We continue to spread the light of freedom to the whole world, inshallah. We see you, we hear you, we love you. Jazakumullah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
فايش اخذونا غمونا علينا وهذا سلبسوا ايدينا وحطوا لنا راسنا في الارض وحكى لنا تعالوا ما نعرفش وين المكان اللي اخذونا فيه فاحنا غاد ما نعرفش وين احنا واحنا ما نعرفش وين احنا، وقعدنا نقول وين احنا قعدوا قلنا اسكتوا تلعب سافر، وقعدوا كل ما اليوم الاول اليوم الثاني قعدوا اخذونا كلنا ورمونا، قعدوا خبطوا فينا مش عارف ايش صار. احنا بس صغار ما كانوش يضربونا، كان بس الكبار فوق فايش قلنا كل ما نقولوا ميه قلنا فيش ميه نقولوا نروح حمام قلنا فيش حمام، ولما الحمام الله يعزكم كان في الارض طلعونا برا فين فوق ال 18 سنه وتحت ال 18
اي بدك تيجي على خط اليمين ولا شمال؟ حرك ايدك هيك. تمام.
فيش كل واحد قاعد على جنب وكل واحد بيتكلم بخبطه برجله وبخبط كفوف وبخبط وهكذا. حكينا له بدنا ميه، حكينا فيش ميه فيش حاجه. طب بدنا نروح الحمام اعملها.
احنا عارفين جرفوا اراضينا، جرفوا دورنا الجديده، وكل اغلبيه اهل السعوديه
حكوا لنا روحونا وصلونا عند سوق السيارات، حكوا لنا خلص كملوا مشي واخذوا من الرجال الهويين
ضلوا معتقليننا لليوم، واليوم اخرجوا عنا واطلقوا.
اسمي محمد محمود سليم، هذا ابويا محمود سليم. كنا في الدار في دار عم ابو احمد لان شارع السكه. يوم شد الحصار شويه، طلع جارنا قالهم قنصوه وقتلوه. راح اخوي ينقذه وقتلوه، قنصوه كمان وقتلوه جنبه. قلنا منطقه خطر، ضلينا قاعدين في الدار 5 ايام محجوزين في الدار، لا اكل ولا شرب، اكل ميتنا خلصت وما فيش شيء ناكل ومش عارفين نتحرك، قاعدين في اوضه. يوم اللي هم هاجمين هجموا على دار جيراننا، كل الدور كسروهم، خشوا على دارنا. قلنا لهم احنا مدنيين، صاروا يفجروا في الدار والأخ ومش عارفين ايش يعملوا، صاروا يفجروا تفجيرات وطخ على الدار على الحيطان وعلى كل الدار. بعدين اخذونا قالوا لنا نطلع واحد عريان، طلعوا الحريم اول شيء، بعدين خلونا نشلح كل وعينا، بعدين لبسنا تاني وطلعنا برا. اخذونا على دار مش عارف وين، الحريم اخذوهم على جنب على جهه ثانيه مش عارفين عنهم اي حاجه. امياتنا وخواتنا، انا امي مريض تربو، امي مريض تربو واخواتي صغار، واحد مريض ربو برضه، تنتين معهم التهابات، بنات تنتين بنات وولد صغير، وامي والله ما عارفين عنهم حاجه. اخذونا حجزونا في دار، كسرونا تكسير.
حط القناص على راسي، قشر القناص على راسي وقال له خليك مقشر عليها. لما شاف رقم الهويه ضل يطلع ويهز في راسه، وقعدت الجنديه تحكي لي يعني من بعيد، تأشر لي ايش اعمل، ايش اسوي، بقول لي اشلح الشاله، اشلح هذا، اشلح بس الجنديات كانوا طلبوا مني اشلح كل وعيه ويشوفوا ايش في لابسه، ايش اي شيء بجيها، بتطلع كل بس بالاوعيه الداخليه. بحكي له انا بعرفش، وكان يخبطني، كان يضربني، كان يخبطني وخبطني على بطني وانا حامل. قلت له انا حامل بالشهر الخامس، خبطني على بطني لحتى الان بتوجع من بطني، وخبطني على راسي. وبعدين حكى خلاص هلقيتها بنتي بالزابط كيش تحكي، صار يهدد فيا في ابني ويهدد فيا في حالي، صار يحكي لي هلقيتها الجنود بيغتصبوكي وخلاص خدوها. لما اجى الدور الثانية اللي ورايا
حددك انهم يغتصبوكي؟
حددني انهم يغتصبوني. ايش قلت له طخني، حكيت له طخني.
كيف حالك؟
الحمد لله.
كيف انت، امورك تمام؟
كويس.
احكينا عن وضعك. احكينا عن وضعك يلا. طلع بالرغم من الإصابة البالغة إلا أن الضحكة ما بتغادر وجه ريتال. إيش نفسك يا ريتال؟
نفسي أسافر عشان أتعالج، بس أنا مش زي الأولاد بس صغار، زي إخواتي. رجلي موجوعة ورجلي مش حاسة.
علي صوتك، ايش مالك؟
موجوعة رجلي بتوجعني. مش حاسة فيها. أنا بمشي زي الصغار. قطع رجلي.
يعني هاي إصابة رجال.
رجلي وقفت ونفسي أتعالج. نفسي أسافر عشان أتعالج وأصير أمشي زي الصغار والكبار.
يعني هذه ريتال وهذا صوتها. ريتال بتناشد العالم انها تسافر وتتعالج. زي ما انتم شفتوا ريتال يعني طفلة فلسطينية اصيبت قدميها الاثنين، اذا ما تمش تحويلها ممكن هذه رجلها تشفيها.
صفر اكيد زعلانين الحين عشان راحوا من الدنيا، اما لا بالعكس انا بتمنى اكل مكان.
راحوا ضحية مين؟ قولوا لي يا ناس، واحد عرفوني ضحية مين احنا؟ يا شعب، يا دول العربية اسمعيني، يا دول العربية يا رب صوتي كلهم يسمعوه. صوتي ينعل على الدول اللي قاعدة وبتاكل وبتشرب وولادها بيناموا. يصحوا، احنا دمنا من دمكم. اصحوا قوموا تحركوا، احنا بنموت احنا شعبنا بموت، حرام عليكم. اتقوا الله فينا يا ناس، انا بقول لكم اتقوا الله فينا، لازم يصير فيكم زي ما صار فينا. تخيلوا يمكن يوم يجيكوا انتوا يصير فيكوا زينا.
جينا هنا عشان الحرب، والحرب كانت تخوف كتير، بس اروح عالدار فجبتش معي نواعي كتير. الدنيا هان سقع كتير، فيش فريش كتير، لكن لما يكون على الغاز بالبيت أحسن من هنا، عشان غاز هالنار، عشان في دخنة كتير ونار. أنا بصف تاني، أنا بعيش بالصف هان. الصف اللي المدرسة أحسن من الصف اللي هان، لأني بشوف معلمتي وأصحابي وبتعلم وبكتب ولون وبرسم. أما الصف اللي هم مليان ناس كتير وسقع كتير، فيش لنا واسعة كلنا. بتمنى أروح أرجع مدرستي وداري إن شاء الله أخلص الحرب.
It is December 10th. I have updates for today. If I miss anything, please comment it. The IOF bombed the second floor of Kamal Adwan Hospital, which is the maternity ward. This resulted in the martyrdom of 2 patients. Israeli forces have fired an ambulance carrying critically wounded patients while beating and abusing a paramedic. The attack came as 6 ambulances belonging to the Palestinian Red Crescent carried 11 patients from Al-Ahli Baptist Hospital in northern Gaza City to another hospital in the south. The Palestinian Red Crescent said the ambulances had to stop for hours at several checkpoints and for military inspections, during which one of the wounded patients died. Near one of the checkpoints, Israeli forces opened fire on one of the ambulances, damaging it. At a separate checkpoint heading south, Israeli forces detained B and stripped one of the traveling paramedics. The medic was then forced to walk more than 2 kilometers across a checkpoint handcuffed and unclothed. Fighting across several locations in Gaza has been reported between the IOF and resistance groups. The Qassam brigades attacked Israeli soldiers in Jabalia refugee camp and El Fallujah areas in the northern Gaza Strip. Al-Quds brigades said it bombed Israeli forces near a cultural center east of the southern city of Khan Yunis. And the Israeli army claimed it attacked more than 250 Hamas-related targets inside Gaza in the past 24 hours. But similar to yesterday, with their 450 strikes in Gaza, most of these targets were actually civilian infrastructure and resulted in civilian deaths. More than 28 Palestinians, including a woman, were illegally detained overnight in the occupied West Bank by IOF. There are testimonies from Palestinian people in Gaza right now on middleeasteye on Instagram. I highly recommend going and watching those videos, especially the one about the pregnant woman and her experience with the IOF. It is incredibly eye-opening and incredibly important, and it really shows you that every accusation is a confession when it comes from Israel. This is what the head of the UN's Agency for Palestinian Refugees said. Israel may be preparing to force Palestinians into Gaza en masse into Egypt. UNRWA head Felipe Lazzarini issued the warning in an op-ed for the LA Times on Saturday, as 1.9 million Palestinians remain trapped on the southern edge of the Gaza Strip amid dire humanitarian conditions. The developments we are witnessing point to attempts to move Palestinians into Egypt, regardless of whether they stay there or are resettled elsewhere, adding that the Israeli military's destruction of northern Gaza was a first stage of such a scenario. Its advancing campaign in the southern city of Khan Yunis, which has pushed Palestinians from there to the far southern tip of the enclave, is the next phase. If this path continues, leading to what many are already calling a second Nakba, Gaza will not be a land for Palestinians anymore. This is why the US continues to reject a ceasefire. This is why Israel continues to reject a ceasefire. This is why Netanyahu keeps insisting that this war is about Hamas, when in reality it is about further colonization. It is about genocide. It is about ethnic cleansing. It is about displacement of the Palestinian people so that they may gain control over the land. We're already seeing these plans that these Israeli officials have for Gaza. We're seeing the settlements that they want to build in Gaza. They're already talking about which Israeli settlers will be living in these settlements. And these leaders have noted that the occupied West Bank will be next, and after that, southern Lebanon, Beirut, and then surrounding countries will also be attacked as well. They said that this will take them years to accomplish, but that they plan to do it. That is why these war criminals need to be held accountable. They need to be taken down. And the American government needs a rude awakening. Continue protesting, continue boycotting. Tomorrow is Monday, the 11th. There's a strike. Don't go into work, don't go to school, don't shop, nothing. We're going on strike tomorrow. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
The Palestinians who were filmed naked to their underwear on the ground by the Israeli army in northern Gaza have been released, and they gave their testimonies, and honestly they are horrific. They testified of physical abuse, and you can see the signs on their face and their bodies, and also some of their relatives were shot dead in front of their eyes. They described how much they were physically tortured. They were numbered on their hands. As you can see here, this one is numbered on his hand, 14-5. Another one was numbered on his hands. Others also said that they stripped down the women who stripped down to their underwear as well. I'm gonna let you listen to some of these testimonies.
اسمي محمد محمود سليم، هذا أبويا محمود سليم. كنا في الدار في دار عم أبو أحمد لأن شارع السكة. يوم شد الحصار شوية، طلع جارنا، الأم قنصوه وقتلوه. راح أخوي ينقذه وقتلوه، قنصوه كمان وقتلوه جنبه. قلنا منطقة خطر، ضلينا قاعدين في الدار 5 أيام محجوزين في الدار، لا أكل ولا شرب. أكل ميتنا خلصت، وما فيش شيء ناكل ومش عارفين نتحرك، قاعدين في أوضة. يوم الأم هاجمين هجموا على دار جيراننا، كل الدور كسروهم، خشوا على دارنا. قلنا لهم احنا مدنيين، صاروا يفجروا في الدار ويطخوا مش عارفين ايش يعملوا. صاروا يفجروا تفجيرات ويطخوا على الدار، على الحيطان، على كل الدار. بعدين اخذونا قالوا لنا نطلع واحد واحد عريان، طلعوا الحريم اول شيء، بعدين خلونا نشلح كل وعينا، بعدين لبسنا تاني وطلعنا برا. اخذونا على دار مش عارف وين، الحريم اخذوهم على جنب على جهه ثانيه مش عارفين عنهم اي حاجه. امياتنا وخواتنا، انا امي مريض ربو، امي مريض ربو واخواتي صغار، واحد مريض ربو برضه، تنتين معهم التهابات، بنات تنتين بنات وولد صغير، وامي والله ما عارفين عنهم حاجه. اخذونا حجزونا في دار، كسرونا تكسير الضرب.
هم برا كميه يعني فوق.
لقيت ايش اليهود جرفاتهم اجت تتجرف بطولنا، جينا احنا استسلمنا، اخذوا منا جوالاتنا وكل شيء وخيارنا وشلحونا وعينا، بعدين احنا رجعنا الاسلام، بعدين اخذونا زي هيك. طلع كيف هذا كله من المرابط البلاستيك حطوا لنا فيهم هيك زي هيك، وبنقصر راسك هيك بيتموا ماشي معه، تعرفش انت لا وين وما وين.
مكلبشين يدق شو؟
كانوا مكلبشين بس انا شويه حتى اليهود اذا عسل على ايدي هذه في البوت هي مفهومه يمكن مكسوره، برضه بيقاروا نفس الشيء. طلع كيف.
Because Israel never stops inspiring youngsters in Palestine to become journalists to report on the suffering of their people due to Israel's aggression, meet Lama Jamous, a 9-year-old aspiring journalist. Lama started picking up her phone to record and report on the aggression and the airstrike that she sees in her surroundings.
إذا الناس مليانة جو مش عارفين وين بنروح ونيجي، وهي الناس قاعدة تمشي في الشوارع وبتحاول تجيب أكل ورغم هيك وفيش أكل بالسوق.
And in this post, she introduced herself. She says, "Hello friends, my name is Lama Jamous. I am 9-year-old. I live in the Gaza Strip. A few days ago it was my 9th birthday, but the circumstances of the war prevented my family from celebrating it. However, my wishes on this day are to be a journalist who conveys the suffering of my people and my family and exposes the crimes of the Israeli occupation. I hope to God that we can get through these difficult days and that I can return to my warm bed." This cute little girl met with Wael Dahdouh, the Al Jazeera journalist, whom his family got targeted by a targeted Israeli airstrike and lost his wife and kid.
أنا الآن قابلت عمو وائل الدحدوح أبو حمزة، شو رسالتك عمو وائل؟
الله، رسالتي لمين؟ إلك ولا لكل الناس؟ لكل الناس.
As long as Israel continues with its aggression on the Palestinians, it will always give us aspiring journalists, risking their lives to convey their stories, like Mu'taza Azaiza, strong, eloquent female journalists like Pester, resilient, courageous journalists like Bisan, and many others, and all what we saw from these brave Palestinian journalists, that at the time when they're losing their loved ones and their family members, they never stop doing their job. Palestine will become hurra because of the likes of Lama and her friends.
The UK police have lost their damn minds. They're looking for this man, and I'm going to cover his face because I do not want them to try to find him. But they're looking for this man, and you want to know what reason they're looking for him? Because he was holding this sign at the protest today in London. And not just him, they're also looking for this lady, I'm still covering their faces, because she made this sign comparing what they did in Nazi Germany to what they're doing currently. How are y'all going to be mad about the truth? Not only did they vote down the ceasefire, the next day they sold 14,000 tank shells to Israel without congressional oversight as an emergency. This really is the United States' genocide against the Palestinian people. This is the United States' genocide on Palestine. And I need the rest of the world to wake up. I need the entire world to wake up, because the fact that the United States is the only reason why there's not a ceasefire when every other country has voted for it. Every country, 120 countries voted for it in the General Assembly. The United States was the only one to vote no in the last ceasefire, but because of their no, there's nothing that can be done. I hope the entire world is waking up to the evil that is the United States government.
According to an Israeli study, Israel once again broken a record, and not in a good way. And this is something we already knew, but now it's validating just to hear this. So in this article over here, they conducted a study, and the Israeli army has dropped the restraint in Gaza, and the data shows unprecedented unaliving. Now this means that this study concludes that this war is worse than any other, including World War II. And we know what happened in World War II, right? The same thing that they keep using as an excuse to justify what they're doing, and that if you come after them for war crimes, you're anti-Semitic because of this thing that happened in World War II. According to this article, which is the media outlet that Israel is trying to shut down, they're concluding that this is worse than World War II. And that they're doing the same thing, committing a Holocaust against an imprisoned people they don't want on their own land. The same way the people of Germany that were not wanted in their land, we saw what happened then, and they're doing the same exact now. But according to this, it's much worse because the rate is much higher.
Israeli airstrikes just destroyed the oldest and largest mosque in Gaza, called the Great Amari Mosque. Now I have a question. Where is the international and global outcry for the destruction of such a monumental building? Where's the outpouring of outrage? When the Notre Dame Cathedral was destroyed years ago, what happened? The whole world got upset. It was set on fire. Everybody was talking about it. Everybody and their mama. Celebrities donated millions of dollars to what happened to the Notre Dame. What about this? This mosque is ancient. It's history. It should be protected. It should be preserved. And Israel destroyed it. Palestinians in Gaza are literally outraged that this beautiful mosque, an ancient building, is being destroyed because it's part of their history. It's part of the history of Palestine, even centuries ago, you know? These are the things that you need to preserve. These are the things that you need to take care of. And Palestinians have prayed in that mosque. Children have grown praying and seen their parents pray in that mosque. They run around in that mosque. These are memories. These are history. This is part of the history. And what Israel is doing is wiping out the history of Palestinians to make sure people don't know that Palestine is the original. These people are the original people of this land. They are killing and unaliving writers, authors, historians. You know, anyone that can document the real history of Palestine. This is crazy. Where is the outcry? Where are the celebrities to donate millions of dollars to preserve this mosque?
Remember the images we saw a few days ago with innocent Palestinian boys and men who were stripped and humiliated? Well, they're now testimonies that are coming out from some of the people that were captured. Muhammad describes that even before they were taken captives, they trapped them in their homes for at least 5 days where they did not have access to food or water. Anyone that tried to leave, they were unalived. They separated the girls and the women from the men and the boys, and they had the men and the boys come out of the homes stripped down. They took them and then they tortured them. Ahmed talks about the torture they experienced, how they were beaten, how they were deprived of water, how if they wanted to go to the bathroom, they were told to just go on themselves. These are innocent civilians, and they were claiming that these were Hamas members. These are babies. Remember the images we saw where they had men kneeling over what looked like a mass grave? This man describes them pretty much tossing them in there and then covering them with sand, and he said that they heard screams, and then there was no more screams, so they thought they were martyred. Then they saw them again 5 or 10 minutes later, but they were in dire conditions. These are war crimes, and these are innocent civilians. There's no justification for this.
This is summer or a date, you know, it's really nutritious, super delicious, you got to try it. And this is a man by the name of Mark Levin. He is a lawyer, y'all. I am sorry. He said, quote, "There are no innocent Palestinians." Really, Mark? Who are you? Oh wait, he works for Fox News. Really, enough said. But who gave him this nickname, the Great One? I really need to know. Who gave him that?
What's really crazy about some people is that they would go and watch a movie like Hunger Games, root for Katniss Everdeen and the fight for resistance against an oppressive, tyrannical regime. They would watch Braveheart support William Wallace in his fight for independence against a colonial power. You would watch Star Wars, root for Luke Skywalker, support the rebels in their fight, cheer when the Death Star gets blown up. But in real life, you just support the dark side. I guarantee you for a fact that these people would be calling Luke Skywalker a terrorist if this happened in real life. Make it make sense to me. Do you have no level of critical thinking to see how these movies are actually inspired by real-world events and how what's happening here is also happening in our world in some way or another? Star Wars was inspired by the Vietnam War, and yes, the United States are the dark side. I don't need to explain this to you. The Hunger Games was largely inspired by the events that happened in the Iraq War and footage that was released from the Iraq War. It's just wild to me that you would build yourself up to be this hero if you were in these fictional stories, but you are just the villain in real life. It's not that hard, brother. It's just do your research.
So you want to talk about your October 7th? Okay, let's talk about ours. 1948, Deir Yassin Massacre. 1948, Pantura Massacre. 1953, Kibya Massacre. 1956, Kafr Qasim Massacre. 1956, Rafah Massacre. 1970, Bahr al-Bakr Massacre. 1982, Sabra and Shatila Massacre. 1994, Khalil Massacre. 2002, Jenin Massacre. Gaza Massacre 2002, Gaza 2012, Gaza 2014, Gaza 2021, Gaza 2023. So when you can sit with Palestinians and talk about our massacres, then we can talk about your October 7th. And as always, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
Settler colonies were, in brackets, are, premised on the elimination of the native societies. The colonizers come to stay. Invasion is a structure, not an event. He's thinking, of course, of Australia. You could say the same thing about New Zealand. You could say the same thing about Canada or the United States. But think of those words in regard to Palestine. In Palestine, both that structure and the war that resulted from it are still ongoing today after 100 years. It is a war that seems endless to the Palestinians themselves.
Smell that? $11 billion everyone had saved in the last few months not going to Starbucks. Here's another Starbucks copycat. Cinnamon coffee cake. This is great. Spray your pan with nonstick spray. 2/3 cups of flour, 1/3 cup of brown sugar, tablespoon of cinnamon, 1/4 cup or 4 tablespoons of cold butter. It's tiny pieces. You can use your hands or you can use a fork to press it in to make it a crumble top. We're gonna use white cake mix, 1 cup of water, a 1/2 cup of melted butter, 2 eggs. This is an 8x8 pan. We're gonna do half of the mix on the bottom, half of the crumble topping, the rest of the cake mix. Spread it right on top. Place it in the oven at 350 degrees for 25 to 30 minutes. Allow it to cool down for a few hours, remove it from the tray, and then cut it up. It's so good, you'll love it.
A message to all the Westerners out there, especially Americans. Do not think about this conflict as though it is a conflict between Israel on one side and Palestine on the other. Don't think that this is something that's happening between Palestinians and between Israelis or the Zionist movement or whatever it might be. No. This is a point that Dr. Rashid Khaldi makes, Palestinian historian. This has always been a conflict between Palestine on one hand and between the empires of the world on the other hand. In 1936, when the Palestinians could see what was coming and that their land was going to be given away to people just showing up on their shores, they resisted and revolted against the British. The British sent an army of 100,000 soldiers, well-equipped and trained soldiers, against Palestinian villagers. 100,000 soldiers, and there was only 300,000 Palestinian men alive at that time. They sent a massive army to put down the Palestinians. This has always been a conflict with Palestine on one hand against the empires of the world on the other. First the British, then both the Americans and the Soviet Union together, who both recognized Israeli statehood on the first day that they claimed it. And today it is a conflict between Palestinians on one hand and between America on the other. Look at this reporter who talks about how experts are saying that there is no way this assault on Gaza could happen without America and Biden in particular ensuring quick and easy access to weapons. You are not a bystander to this conflict. You're not somebody on the outside looking at something happening to these poor people that you have no direct connection to. You are involved in this conflict and have been involved in it for a very long time. So you have a responsibility to understand what your government is doing and to ensure and to advocate and to push against them, putting down and exterminating and removing the indigenous people of Palestine.
A few days ago, I was at UCLA and I saw a very clearly Middle Eastern girl drinking Starbucks. And then today I was protesting at Disneyland for Palestine and I saw a ton of Latinx people crossing our picket line, going into Disney, knowing that they donated $2.5 million to Israel. And both of those instances really compelled me to make a video about why you, as a person of color, should care about what's happening in Palestine, regardless or not if you can sympathize with the Palestinian people. If you are a person of color and you're not standing with Palestine out of empathy for the Palestinians, I want to remind you that Zionism is a white supremacist ideology. As much as they try to say, like, there's all different types of races in Israel, Zionists are historically white supremacists. Look at what they did to the Ethiopian Jews, look at what they're doing to the surrounding countries, and truly, they do not care whether or not you are Palestinian if you are a person of color. What they're doing to the Palestinians is not because they picked a very specific group to go and harass, although it sometimes feels like that. They're doing equally horrible war crimes to Lebanon, Syria, surrounding countries, funding Cop City in Atlanta. They train the New York Police Department. Zionism has a hand in racism across the world. So if you think that you're exempt from the brutality of Zionism because you're not specifically Palestinian, you are painfully mistaken. Just because right now they're attacking the Palestinians does not mean that they wouldn't do the same to you, your family, or your country if you were standing in the way of something they wanted. We've seen this hundreds of times in all of the countries bordering Palestine. Because I promise you, the people who said they are not human beings and not human animals, they are subhuman and that is how they should be treated, do not care exactly where you're from. If you're a person of color, you go against what they believe as white supremacists. And because all of our equality is tied together as people of color in this country, when one of us are suffering, it always, always, always affects all other people of color in the country. You are not exempt because you're not Palestinian. None of us are free until all of us are free. So, if you can't boycott out of the kindness of your heart, boycott out of the fear that Zionists don't see you as a different race, as a normal human because you're Egyptian and not Palestinian, or Iranian and not Palestinian. We're all the same to them. It is white supremacy. And the only way to defeat white supremacy is by standing together.
Ariana Huffington, who is the founder of Huffington Post, recently posted a very disturbing and upsetting video where she, alongside these other white female celebrities, make a plea to other women saying that we need to believe the testimonies of eyewitnesses who say that they saw Hamas sexually assault and sexually abuse Israeli women on October 7th. And my question to Ariana Huffington and to these women in this video is, if your main objective is basically that we need to always believe people when they say that they have seen or experienced sexual violence or any type of violence, my question then is, why have you consistently denied Palestinian women of this for the past 75 years? Palestinians have experienced massacre after massacre for the past 75 years. Palestinian women have experienced sexual violence for the past 75 years. And here's the thing, a lot of people don't know this, but whenever Palestinians have to, make a claim against the occupation, they have to go through Israeli court. So their judge and juror is the occupier. And they don't just go through any regular court. They have to go through military court. Palestinians are subjected to Israeli military court. And so all of these claims that is so carefully documented are consistently, almost 99% of the claims that Palestinians make against the Israeli occupation is thrown out because the judge and juror is the occupier. And so my question to these women is, you know, do you not see Palestinian women as equals to Israeli women? Because in your video, you don't mention Palestinian women at all, despite the fact that Palestinian women and children and men are being killed right now. Despite the fact that there's an ongoing genocide right now happening. Over 20,000 Palestinians have died. In fact, right now, the Israeli occupation forces has arrested thousands and thousands of Palestinians for something as small as posting the Palestinian flag or showing their solidarity with Gaza. I mean, people like Ahed Tamimi. And Ahed Tamimi had faced so much violence in Israeli prison in just like the past 2 weeks. I mean, this is what I mean is that white women will never see women of color as their equals. And they show it. They don't even recognize their inherent racism. It's the fact that they could have the audacity to make a video saying that women need to be in solidarity with them. But they don't even acknowledge Palestinian women because they don't see Palestinian women as their equals. They don't recognize Palestinian women. And even though we are witnessing the genocide of Palestinians, they don't feel like they need to mention the genocide of Palestinian women, despite the fact that Palestinians have been, you know, slowly genocided over the past 75 years. There's been a slow extermination of Palestinians for the past 75 years, and this has been documented. This is such a well-documented occupation. And not a single mention about the Palestinian cause. And this is why I say white women will never be our allies, because white women are there to uphold white supremacy, and they have consistently done this historically. They are accomplices to white supremacy.
Not only did Mu'taz call for a total ceasefire by posting this on his Instagram, we had Bisan also post this. She said, global strike. Remember, tomorrow, December 11th, is a global strike day. If the politicians do not hear us, then we can strike from economic life and daily movement, and we can boycott everything. We can put pressure on them to stop supporting and blessing the massacre that is happening in Gaza. Ceasefire now. Then she also added, tomorrow, no work, no school, no shopping, no movement, boycott. Make pressure and stop the massacre. So between Mu'taz saying ceasefire now and saying right now, and Bisan putting into play a literal date that everyone can follow, giving you options of what to do, I think we might have a plan, because it's Sunday today in the United States, and we owe it to them. They said, you know what, we have the influence, you guys are supporting us, let's see if this can work. And just to reiterate, this will be happening on Monday, December 11th. And if you can't absolutely take off from work, there's nothing wrong with going to work, but just make like the other outings like very minimal. So let's try and avoid grocery shopping. Let's try and avoid online shopping. Let's try and avoid putting gas in the cars, like everything. Stay at home. I think we all had enough practice during the pandemic. We know how to stay at home. We know how to do nothing. And if you can't not send your kids to school, it's okay. Just send them to school, just when you to school and back, and that's it. Try your hardest to kind of make it within these bounds. And if your city or your town has access to some kind of a protest that will be happening, because a lot of major cities are having outright protests tomorrow, try and figure out the information. It's really easy to find like local pages on Instagram, on Twitter or X, and that should give you the information of where and when the protests will be happening. I don't know if you heard, but Christmas is canceled this year. And this isn't coming from me. This is coming directly from Bethlehem, Jerusalem, all over Palestine. Because Palestinian Christians, who are the direct descendant and followers of Christ, were like, why would we celebrate the birth of Jesus when our people are suffering? And it's so weird that I have to keep on saying this, but people tend to forget that like it is the literal birthplace of Christianity. You know, like the song Born in Bethlehem. Like sometimes I'm just like, does everyone know where that is? And I don't know if you've heard, but a bunch of churches in Gaza were completely destroyed. A bunch of Christian Gazans were unalive. So all of the churches got together and unanimously decided they're not going to put up Christmas trees. They're going to still be like in mourning. And even their Christmas display is like baby Jesus. Instead of being in his manger, he's like laying amongst the rubble, you know, and there's just like one candle lit for all of the children that have been lost in Gaza. And they felt that that was a great representation of what's going on over there. And honestly, I get it. Like, but then this is where I'm confused. And I'm not saying Catholicism and Christianity are the same thing, but you have the Pope like praying for all of the people who are affected by war, like Ukraine, Israel, Palestine. Like, he made a speech. And then yesterday in Vatican City, they literally lit the Christmas tree, set up like the manger with Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, like baby Jesus. And it just doesn't make sense, because you would think that if there was such like a stance coming directly from Bethlehem and like Jerusalem and like all over, wouldn't like Vatican City kind of follow suit? Or do Catholics just kind of like do like the whole show must go on thing? I don't know, but for me personally, like, this is the vibe right here. Like, Santa's sad, guys. Christmas is not. We're on strike.
Today marks the 75th anniversary of the establishment of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Allow me to share with you some of its most important articles. Article 15, the right to live safely in your land in peace, which guarantees the right to food, shelter, and a life free from violence. As a child, when I felt unsafe, my father was my source of protection. According to Article 3, every child has the right to life. Article 26 requires that everyone has the right to education. Undoubtedly. I'll be honest with you, as you surely know, freedom of speech is also a fundamental human right. You see, human rights don't apply to all humans, especially if you are a Palestinian.
The United States could have stopped the suffering of Palestinians and the death of Palestinians, but chose not to. So many lives could have been saved, but instead we're losing lives by the second because of the United States. 61% of Americans are in favor of a permanent ceasefire. As a Palestinian Muslim American, I want my voice to be heard. And I can speak for Muslim Americans when I say that we will abandon Biden in the upcoming election. We are quite literally being forced to fund the genocide of our own people due to our tax dollars. We are asking for a ceasefire. The people are asking for a ceasefire. What is holding you back? You have blood on your hands.
I have a question. If anyone said this on social media, would they be allowed to keep their clip up? Because this is real life, and
Going to clean up Gaza until the end. The Rebbe said he said it formally on something else, that if we don't, then all of those who have lost their lives have lost their lives for nothing. So therefore, in their honor, we have to continue and make sure it is clean. No terrorism, everything is clean, and then we continue life as before, and we get the terrorists and we get all the captives out, and then we will continue with life.
I don't know if you've seen this within the last 24 hours, but I saw a journalist walking into a completely destroyed building, and there was a small infant hanging by just like one leg upside down. That infant was dead. I just saw two little boys, maybe 2 and 4 at the oldest, who were stuck together, and everyone was trying to pull them out of tons and tons of concrete. I saw a little girl who was probably 9 or 10, and her eyes were wide open. They rushed her into the hospital. She was just pouring blood. And then the video shows her with her eyes wide open as she dies. And her father is standing there, and he tells her how much he loves her, and he tells her how much he loves her. How much cleaner, How many more children do you want to be cleaned? Because we know that children are seen as human animals. We know that the president says there are no innocent civilians in Gaza, even though these children, literally born, a few years old. We know the prime minister sees them as the children of light and the children of darkness. How much more proof do you need to know that this is a genocide against children?
Ireland supports a free Palestine as fiercely as a drunk girl in the bathroom supports all your decisions. Because they get it. Ireland and England are right next to each other, and since England sees the world as its personal charcuterie board, of course they were like, I gotta have it. Ireland was under British rule for 700 years, and in the early 1900s they got their independence. But there were 6 counties in the north that had mostly British people, because that's where the most British landlords displaced the Irish population. They didn't want the independence. They were like, no daddy, don't leave me, I'm baby. A line was divided between Ireland and the northern counties, aka Northern Ireland, who stayed loyal to the UK. A 2-state solution? What could go wrong? Here's where it went wrong. Irish people were the minority in the Northern Ireland, and they got discriminated from housing, jobs, no investment in their neighborhoods. They were upset, and in the 60s, inspired by the US civil rights movements, they started protesting. In an effort to stop protesters in the north, the British sent police over. If there's one thing the police famously do, it's make everything 10 times worse. Decades of violence began between people who wanted a unified Ireland and people who wanted Northern Ireland to stay British. And it gave rise to the IRA, who wanted to defend the Irish freedom fighters. And what did the British call them? You guessed it, terrorists. While the IRA definitely used violence and guerrilla warfare to advance their cause, the British responded by sending more army to Northern Ireland. And what resulted was, say it with me, checkpoints. Detentions without trial, mostly Irish arrests, protesters being killed by the British, which led to a spike in IRA recruitments. Between 1974 and 76, 80 British Protestants died and 370 Irish Catholics. See, is all of this sounding familiar? It wasn't until the late 90s to early 2000s that peace was achieved. This means a lot of Irish people alive today have seen the effects of occupation and are as unforgiving about it as your bestie when you get back together with your ex. They remember.
So I think we realize by now it's not just Zionists that have been indoctrinated, it's most of America. It's almost anybody in power. So let's talk about how this happened right under our noses and what we're dealing with now. So let's start with the birthright trip, right? This is an all-expense paid trip to Israel if you are a Jewish young adult. On this trip, you could stay in 4-star hotels, all food is paid, it's like a vacation. But what they really do on this trip is indoctrinate them, right? Give them this rose-colored view of what Israel is and teach them why Palestinians bad, Israel good. We kind of all know about the birthright trip. But a number that I think is important to see is so far there have been 800,000 of these trips since this has started. That is a lot of people. This one, out of all the things I'm going to show you, probably makes the most sense to be happening. So I wouldn't really have a problem with this trip other than the indoctrination and false narratives that they learn on this trip if it wasn't being funded with over $100 million by the Israeli government, because by now we all know why they have money to do this. Our tax dollars. Our tax dollars give them billions of dollars a year, and then they turn around and live their best life. Free healthcare, free schooling, subsidized housing, 800,000 free vacations for their young adults, $100 million Netanyahu pledged to the birthright trips, and then donors are the other half of it. This is problematic. But anyways, so that's how we've got all of these young kids indoctrinated and seeing only one side of history. Then we have our military. So the FDD, which is the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, organizes an annual military trip to Israel for active duty military officers. All expenses paid, and they're kind of given like the same kind of rhetoric and indoctrination that the birthright kids get, but then also on the military side of things as well. You can read through if you're interested to see more. Guess who's next? You guessed it, our law enforcement. ADL sponsors a leadership seminar in Israel for American law enforcement. So since 2004, ADL has brought over small groups of senior American law enforcement leaders to Israel for a week-long seminar designed to increase their understanding of extremist, terrorist violence, mass casualty attacks, and community resilience. So if you look at what they actually learned on this trip as well, this was actually heavily protested against, and they even considered getting rid of the program because how much heat they were getting in 2022 specifically, I believe. And then they opted out of not getting rid of the program. So they still fund our law enforcement to go for a week trip to Israel to get the same indoctrination. Guess who's next? You guessed it, our government. AIPAC. AIPAC funds trips to Israel for our government. A delegation of 24 House Democrats traveled to Israel in August with the American Israel Education Foundation, the charitable organization affiliated with AIPAC, where they are indoctrinated on the threats to Israel from the opposing side, and also given the same rhetoric and trip that tells them we're awesome, why you should support us. If you go to the bottom of this page on AIPAC's website, you'll see tons and tons of these members of our government who have gone on these trips say how they come back so enlightened, and it just secured their support for Israel even more. We've got our citizens, we've got our military, we've got our police force, and we have our government all over the last couple decades going over in droves to be indoctrinated by the Israeli government to support Israel. This is just another layer. We already know what's going on with the money. The money is the main problem. But it was really odd to me how everybody seemed to be on the same page for support for Israel. We're dealing with mass indoctrination like a cult in the United States of America, or I should say the United States of Israel. This is wild.
Like everybody's attention, Christmas is canceled.
You can't cancel a holiday.
Give it up, Stanley, and you will lose New Year's.
What does that mean?
Jim, take New Year's away from Stanley.
Michael, what's going on?
People living on a piece of land the size of New York City without access to adequate food, water, medicine, and electricity are being bombed by our tax dollars.
And I just don't think it would be appropriate to celebrate under the circus.
We'll leave.
I just want to say something. Palestine will be free. Palestine will be free. Palestine will be free. Palestine is going to be free. It is possible for Palestine to be free. It is possible for Palestine to be free. It is possible for Palestine to be free. We will rebuild Palestine. Palestinians will go back to their land. We will build their airports. Tourism will start back up again. People will recognize that Palestine is a country again. It is possible for Palestine to be free. It is possible for Palestine to be free. It is possible for Palestine to be free. Your voice matters. My voice matters. Our voice together is way stronger. We matter, we matter, we matter. Speak up about Palestine. Keep going. Keep sharing the truth. Every day you plant a little seed into someone that does not know the truth, that has been lied to. Palestine will be free. Palestine will be free. Palestine will be free.
Don't forget that it's not just about free Palestine, but the Palestine that's freeing us along the way.